Hello, gorgeous. Hi, this is Wanda from A Pattern to Follow. Today I'm going to share with you how to make this, I call it my Hello Gorgeous fringed cowl. And I made it out of a red heart yarn that was called Hello Gorgeous that they made a couple of years back that I absolutely loved the color combos of. But unfortunately, they discontinued it. I don't know why. But I was able to find some other yarn to do it in. But first of all, I wanted to let you know that I made this because I found this amazing hat pattern by Mrs. B's Crochet. It's called the Macy Hat. You can find it on Etsy.com. And it's a really fun pattern. And I wanted something that to go with the hat. So, boy, I would encourage you getting this hat pattern. Mrs. B's Crochet. I'll link the hat pattern in below, but you can find her on Ravelry. And she's got some of the cutest yarn combinations in this hat. It's just adorable. Anyway, so I fell in love with the yarn that I saw the hat in, and that's when I went out to find something and then found this Hello Gorgeous yarn that I just fell in love with. And I made a few projects out of a few different colors before they discontinued it. But anyway, so today I'm going to show you how to make a cowl that's very similar. It goes well. It's not exactly the same, but we will be doing this fringed Hello Gorgeous cowl. And the yarn that I found to make it out of is this, I love this yarn. It's a Hobby Lobby yarn. I love this yarn. It's great yarn. Love it a lot. This particular colorway is called Sunset, and it's their print series. So it's not your typical variegated yarn where it's a length and then change. Some of the lengths are longer, some of them are shorter. I don't know if you can see this on camera. Well, actually probably better through here, but you can see how the yarn changes, and they have several different colors in it, so it all blends very well together. They have several different shades in this type of a printed variegated yarn in this brand of, I love this. And this is such soft, nice yarn to do this in. So I decided to make one for my granddaughter, and she just loves this. So this is the yarn we'll be doing today. And I've started the actual cowl, but I'll be showing you in a sample today, but you can see how this yarn works up. So it's really lovely, lovely yarn. This particular colorway is not as bright as that, but that's okay. Like I say, they have other brighter combos if that's your thing. So I'm going to be working in just a short sample today to show you the stitch repeat. And then when we're done, we'll put this one together that I've made. And you will have a Hello Gorgeous fringed cowl. So I'll meet you back here in a second. Okay, the tools you'll be needing for this particular project are, of course, whatever yarn you choose to use. I think this variegated yarns are really, really fun. If it's a yarn you like and you like how often it changes, it gives you a nice segue into different colors. That's great. You'll need a few stitch markers and tapestry needle. This is my favorite kind. You can, of course, use the kind that has a large eye in it. They come in metal too, but I like these because I can get my yarn in super easy. And a pair of scissors. Today I am using a 5.5 or an eye hook. This is my clover hook. It's one of my favorite hooks. I really like the feel of this one. It's very comfortable to crochet with. So let's get started. All right, we're going to be starting with a foundation, half double crochet foundation row. So put a slip knot on your hook, and you're going to be chaining 3. 1, 2, and 3. Now we're going to be, as I said, we're going to be making a foundation half double crochet. So we're going to be making our chains and our half double crochets as we go along. Okay, so you're going to yarn over, go into the very first chain you created right next to the slip knot, yarn over, pull up a loop. You have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through 1 to create your chain. Yarn over and pull through all 3 to create the half double crochet. Now we're going to yarn over and we're going to go back, and this first couple is a little bit hard to see, but we're going to be going under these stitches right here. Let me go under it so you can see it actually creates a V. They crossed over. It was that first chain we made, so we're going to be going under that stitch. Then we yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 1 to create the chain, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. Okay, I'm going to tighten that slip knot we made, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to mark, because the actual chain 3 that we made at the beginning is our first, counts as our first stitch. Okay, so I'm going to put a stitch marker in that. And then as I go along and I make these, I just go merrily along, and then I'll stop after a while and go back through and count them. And I usually mark at like every 20 stitches or so that I don't have to recount every time. So, but let's do a couple more of these stitches together, okay? So to help you know where you're going, it's not the 3 stitches that you just did to create your half double crochet. But if you turn your work, you can see those 2 stitches right there. That was the chain that you created. That's what you put your hook back under to pull up your loop. Again, don't forget to create your chain. So pull through 1 and then pull through all 3. Again, yarn over, turning that, not those 3 chains, but the stitch right next to that. Under, sorry if my yarn was in the way. Under both of those, pull up a loop, pull through 1 for the chain, and pull through all 3. Yarn over, not the 3 here, but turning and going under those 2 loops right there. Yarn over, pull up a loop, pull through 1, and pull through all 3. Okay, so as I said, I go along and I'll do them for a while, and then I'll go back and I count my stitches, and you do that by counting across the top. Count where you put your stitch marker as your first one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have done 6 stitches so far. Okay, so I'll go, like I say, I'll go along and I put them like every 20. You can, if you have more stitch markers, you like counting by 10, counting by 25, however you want to do it. You're going to end up with either 109, 112 stitches in this medium weight yarn. Whatever's going to measure about 33 inches, okay? So you might want to measure that when you get to that point. Make sure it's not, you really don't want it much longer than that, or it'll be too long to do this cowl with. So I'm going to pause the camera while you keep doing that. I'm going to make a sample of probably, I don't know, 16 stitches or so, because I'm just going to be working on a small sample to show you how each row goes. So I'll meet you back here when you have your 109 or 112 chains, whatever it takes to get approximately 33 inches for your base row. Okay, I've done 25 foundation half double crochet stitches. That's a multiple of 3 plus 1. So 24 is a multiple of 3, plus I added 1 stitch, okay? So whatever your multiple is to get you about 33 inches long, okay? Now you're going to chain 2, and now we're going to be doing a single crochet in the 3rd loop of the half double crochet. So let's talk about stitches for a minute. So this is normally the top edge of the stitches that you go in. Normally you'll put your hook under these 2 or front loop only or whatever. But because we want to create a 3rd loop, which is going to create this this chain look across the top, we're going to be going in the 3rd loop. And for this one, what we're going to be doing is forcing, so when that's the top of your chain, when you turn it sideways, you can see there's another V going this way. We're going to be forcing these stitches forward to create a chain. Now, I've seen it done several different ways where you only go in the back loop. Well, for this particular one, to force it forward, otherwise it leaves too big of a ridge, we're actually going to be going, so this is the third loop on this side, this is the third loop on this side, and this is the third loop on this side. That one's kind of, it's not as straight as the front one, it's angled off a little bit, but that is the third loop before these V's. We're going to be catching the back loop of what your normal stitch would be. So we're gonna be catching this stitch, and plus we're gonna go down and catch that third loop. Okay, so a lot of times I've seen it done where you only catch one yarn, but for this one to pull it forward and make it flat, you need to catch both of those. Okay, so we've just done a chain 2. So we're going to go, don't get my work flipped around there. We're going to go down into the back loop of the first stitch on the row, and then you tip your work sideways to grab. This one can be a little bit hard to see. This is the one we're aiming for right here. When I let go of my loop, it popped right up. So I'm going to keep that sideways and go through that one and that one. Now we're just doing a single crochet in these rather than a half double crochet. A lot of times you'll do a half double crochet, but this is just a single crochet for this, okay? So then you're gonna pull through both of those loops, pull up a loop, and then just complete a single crochet, pull through 2, okay? Then going to the next stitch, which this is the one we just did it in. So moving forward to the next stitch, we're catching that one, and we're catching this one. So you'll have 2 loops on your hook. It's the back stitch of your normal stitch and the third loop stitch. Pull through those 2, yarn over, pull through 2 to create a single crochet. Now you've got 2 of them. So just make sure you're going into the next one, not the one. You can see here is where we've caught this stitch. So we're moving on to this stitch. So this will be our third one. Under that third loop, pull up a loop and pull through 2. Okay, now we've done 3. I'm going to take a second. This is where your stitch markers come in. I really, especially when I'm going back and forth, I find it really super important to mark your first and last stitch so you don't get confused, you don't add stitches, you don't miss one. It makes it easier so you don't have to count every single row as long as you're not missing a stitch somewhere in between. Your count should turn out right, okay? So I marked my very first stitch with the stitch marker. Okay, going on, this will be our 4th stitch. Turning it to the top of the work, catching the back loop, turning it sideways and catching that third loop. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over and do a single crochet. Again, the back loop and the third loop from behind, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. Again, make sure you're not doing it back in the same stitch you did, but moving forward. Back loop, third loop, pull through, and complete a single crochet. Okay, so you're going to do this all the way across until you reach your stitch marker, which should be that first chain 2 that you, or chain 3 that you did when you started your foundation half double crochet. Okay, so you can see what we're doing here. It's a little hard to see on this first row, but we've pushed these forward to make it look like there's a row of chains along here, okay? You can see it creating that. It's going to show up a lot better in the next row than it does right now, okay? So keep doing this across one more time in the back loop and the third loop. Pull up a loop and pull through 2 to complete a single crochet. Make sure, if you want to double check and make sure you haven't missed one, it never hurts to go back and count. I know 109 stitches or whatever is a lot to count. That's why stitch markers come in handy, but just keep doing this across, back loop, third loop, pull up, and single crochet, okay? I'll meet you here at the end of my row. Okay, I just wanted to show you, I have one more regular half double crochet to go through, but then I want to show you how to catch, what to do to catch that chain that you did. There's not really a third loop, so you're just going to go in, because it's a chain stitch, you're just going to go down and grab another stitch down there, pull it through, and pull through 2, okay? That way you make sure you have the exact number of stitches. Let's go back and count. I said I had 25, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Did I miss one? 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay? So 25. Come back up. Well, we'll mark that stitch after we turn, okay? So now you're ready to go on to the next round. I'm going to take that stitch marker out because I'm going to use it in a second. And we're going to be doing a row of single crochet. So only chain 1, turn and go into that first stitch. Make sure you don't hit the chain, just go right into that first stitch. Pull up a 1 and pull through 2. Next one, just a single crochet. So under 2 stitches, or under the both loops, so you're getting the V, pull up. So going through both, not just the back chain like we did on the row before, okay? And I've done 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna mark my stitch. Again, the turning chain does not count, so you wanna make sure you're getting the actual first stitch in there, okay? And just single crochet all the way across, going into under the stitch, so you're getting both loops on your hook. Pull through and pull through 2 for a single crochet, okay? A pretty basic stitch. Now you can see, I'll stop for a second and turn it. You can see now better that row of chain is popping out better. Now that we've gone into another row, you can see it better, okay? So do your single crochet all to the end, all the way to the end of the row, and then I'll show you what the next row is. I'm in my last single crochet stitch. Take my stitch marker out and single crochet into that. And now I have 25 in my particular sample. This is the row where you need to make sure you absolutely have the correct count, because we're going to be going on to the puff stitch, and that is where the count is really critically important, okay? So you're going to chain 2 for your turning stitch, turn your work, and now you are going to half double crochet into that first stitch. I'm going to take a second and throw my stitch marker in there so I don't forget to go back. I usually like to go a few stitches in before I do this, but because of what we're doing, I'm going to mark that first one right now. Okay. Now you are going to skip the next stitch. So we're not going into this one, we're going into this one. And do a half double crochet into the next stitch, okay? Which is a yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on your hook. Okay, now you'll see that you have a skip stitch back here that we missed. We're going to be going backwards into this stitch to make our puff stitch, okay? So you are going to yarn over, going backwards into that skip stitch, go in and pull up a loop. You have 3 loops on your hook. You're going to yarn over, go back into the same stitch, go under, pull up a loop. Now you have 5 loops on your hook. One more time, yarn over, go in the hole, pull up a loop, and now you should have 7 loops on your hook. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, okay? Now you're going to yarn over and pull through all 7 loops on your hook. And we've just created our first puff stitch, okay? Now very often with a puff stitch, you'll do a chain 1 to close it off, but this particular pattern, we don't do that, okay? So now making sure you're going into the next stitch and not this one back here that's kind of hidden by the hoop. Make sure that there's no other stitch coming out of the next one you go into. So you're going to yarn over and do a half double crochet, yarn over, so pull through all 3, and we're going to do the same thing. So we're going to skip the next stitch and go into the next stitch. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through all 3. Okay, now we're going to do a puff stitch going backwards into the stitch we missed. One more time, that's a yarn over, go in the stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, 3 on your hook, yarn over, go in the stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, 5 on your hook. One more time, yarn over, under, pull up a loop, and 7 on your hook, okay? Yarn over, pull through all 7 loops on your hook. One more time, moving forward, yarning over, making sure you're not going back into the one that has all the stuff in it, but one that does not have any stitch work in it. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3, skipping a stitch, going to the next one, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through all 3. One more time, the puff stitch. Rather than counting how many stitches on the loop, I think it's easier to just count that you go in the whole 3 times. So make sure you yarn over each time. Yarn over, go in the stitch once, yarn over, go in twice, yarn over for the 3rd time. So if you go in that stitch 3 times, a yarn over each time, you should have 7 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull through all 7. Okay, so this row is just a repeat of that, making sure again that you're not going into this stitch, but into the one that doesn't have any in it, and moving forward down the row until you get to the very last one. You should have 1 stitch left at the end, which you'll just yarn over when you complete your puff stitch, and you'll just like this. If this was the last stitch, I would be done with puff stitch, and then I would go into the next stitch with a half double crochet. That will end your row, but I'll come back and show you for sure how to do that. So moving on to my next puff stitch, I've done one here, I skip a stitch and go on. So just do this all the way across on your row, pulling through once and twice and 3 times. Like I say, I count 3 rather than worrying about how many stitches are on my hook, okay? As long as you're yarning over, you should end up with 7. I'll meet you at the end of the row. Okay, I wanted to do my last one with you just so I can show you how we get that last one in there. Next stitch, I just finished a puff, half double crochet, skip a stitch, half double crochet, coming back, yarn over once, twice, and 3 times, and pulling through all 7 on the loop. I'm going to take my stitch marker out and do a half double crochet in that last stitch. So yarn over and pull through all 3, and that completes your row. Okay, so you have your foundation half double crochet we just did, and we did a single crochet in the 3rd loop and another row of single crochet, and we just came back with a half double crochet puff stitch row. Now we're going to chain 2, turn our work, going into that 1st stitch again, do another half double crochet. Okay, half double crochet, and we're just going to half double crochet across. So that's 2, 3, 4. This is what typically I have kind of a pattern of the way I do things. So I usually stitch 4 and then go back and throw my stitch marker in. It's easier than marking it with the very first stitch. But with the puff row, I wanted to make sure you knew where I was headed, okay? So just continue this row all the way across with half double crochet stitches, and you should have the exact amount of half double crochet as your foundation row called for, okay? So 109, 112, whatever that was that you did to get 33 stitches. Okay, I'll meet you back here at the end of the row. Okay, I'm taking my stitch marker out to do my last half double crochet for this row. Again, those stitch markers make a huge difference on this to know where you're going. And also because this particular stitch pattern has a tendency to kind of pull sideways, so we're going to kind of end up with our, rather than being straight up, they'll be slightly tilted, which won't matter when we put the cowl together. But that's why marking your stitches will help you not get confused thinking, oh, I added a stitch, my row's getting longer, but actually your work's just kind of tilting a little bit. So make sure you mark that first and last stitch. Okay, so for this row, we're going to go back to the single crochet into the third loop. So chain 1, and again, we're going into the back loop of the top, the stitches that we would normally be going through, just catching the back loop and going down and grabbing that third loop. It's kind of tricky on that first stitch. Pull up a loop and complete a single crochet. Moving on to the next stitch, catching the back. I'm tipping it because it's almost easier to go sideways with this to see my loops, but make sure you're catching the back loop of that top row and the third loop on the half double crochet row. Pull up a loop and complete a single crochet. Okay, I'm going to mark my stitch. I've done 2. So marking that first stitch and then going on. So we go into the back loop, grabbing that third loop, literally turning my work so that it's the opposite side is, yeah. Normally I would hold my work like this, but I'm flipping it so it's easier to see that third loop. And sometimes I have to take my finger to grab it to get it under the stitches. If you crochet tight, this may be a tough one to get in, but hopefully your stitches are not loose, but nice and medium so you can get that third loop easily. Okay, one more time in the back loop and down into the third loop. Pull through both of those and pull through and complete a single crochet. Okay, you can see we're now creating another row of ridges across here. Okay, so keep doing that all the way across and I'll meet you back at the end of the row. Third loop. Now we're just going to chain 1 and we're going to turn and do a single crochet row. So under the first stitch, all the way across, pulling up a loop and pulling through 2 for a single crochet. Okay, I just did 4. Like I say, that's my typical pattern. Then I don't have to count anymore after that because I've got my stitch marker in the next row. Okay, so single crochet across, I'll meet you at the end of the row. Going into my last single crochet. And then we're going to chain 2 and turn our work. Now we're back to the front side of the pattern. You can see the 2 rows of chains we've just completed, okay? Gonna half double crochet into that first stitch. I'm going to mark it. Actually, I'm not. I'm gonna go back and do it. Okay, so we're back on the puff row stitch. So first one, skip 1, half double crochet into the next. It's just easier to mark your stitch when you're not on the very first one. So now I'll mark it. Okay, now we're going to create the puff stitch by going back into that stitch we missed, okay? This is a repetition of rows, so we're back on the puff stitch row. So yarn over, pull up a loop, and 2, and 3, yarn over, pull through all 7 loops on the hook. Yarn over, going into the next half double crochet that doesn't have a stitch in it. Make sure you're not going back into the one that's hiding under the puff stitch. And skipping a stitch, next half double crochet, and now going back to our skip stitch in between, yarning over, pull up a loop, 2 and 3 times, 7 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through all 7 loops, yarn over, half double crochet in the next free stitch. Skip a stitch, half double crochet in the next stitch. yarning over, going back to the skip stitch once, twice, 3 times, and then yarning over and pulling through all 7, okay? So you're just going to repeat that stitch all the way across. You can see we're doing the puff stitches when we're on the front side row. Stitch to the end, you'll end up with a single half double crochet in that very last stitch. I'll meet you back here. I've just finished my last half double crochet in that very last stitch. I'm going to be chaining 2 and turning, and half double crocheting in that very first chain space or stitch space. So 1, and we're just going to be half double crocheting across. And again, that's 4, so I'm going to stop and go back and put my stitch in, whatever you prefer. If you prefer to do it on the first one so you don't forget, that's okay too. Okay, so we're just going to be half double crocheting across. You can see that we're just repeating our stitch pattern, okay? I'll probably be doing one more set of these together with you, and then I'll show you how to finish your very last row. So I'll do one more row of puff stitches and show you how to finish your last row, but I'll just go ahead and meet you back here to remind you what's next. Just finished my last half double crochet. Now we're going to be just repeating. Whenever we do this half double crochet row, we do the third post stitch to push those stitches forward. So again, I'm working, instead of kind of turning my work, I'm working with the back side facing up. Under those 2, pull up a loop, pull through 2 for a single crochet. Next loop, pull up a loop, single crochet. Okay, I'm going to flip my work for a second. So I find that first single crochet I just did, putting a stitch marker in so I don't miss it. Okay, just repeating all the way along that back loop from these top row stitches and the third loop. Pull up a loop, single crochet, back loop, third loop, pull up a loop, single crochet. Okay, finish that all the way across. I'll meet you back here. Okay, we're just repeating our row thing. We just finished our row where we did the third loop, so we pushed a row of chains forward by doing that. Chaining 1, turning, and in the first stitch, single crochet. So single crochet across. And as you can see, we're just doing a pattern repeat now. So with the exception of the first foundation row, you do, once you've created your chain row, you do a row of single crochet, then you do your puff stitch, then you do your half double crochet, then you do your single crochet in the back loop only to create your chain, another row of single crochet, and then your puff stitch row, half double crochet, single crochet in the back loop only, which we just finished, and now we're doing another row of single crochet. That's basically the pattern repeat until you get to the very last row of puff stitches. And then I will show you how to complete that row, okay? So I'm just gonna keep single crocheting across. I'm gonna make myself another row of puff stitches, and then I'm probably going to complete off my sample, but your scarf cowl will be on both of these, both the one out of the Hello Gorgeous yarn has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows of puff stitches. This also has 6 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it needs to measure approximately about 8 inches across when you've completed 6 rows. If you're using a thicker yarn and you reach close to, you're about 7 inches, by the time you do another row of puff stitches, you may only have 5, and that's okay. You don't really want it to be any much wider than a total of 8 by the time you're done, around 8 inches. It doesn't have to be exact, but so by the time you do, hopefully if you're using a medium worsted weight yarn, you'll be about this same width that I'm working with this yarn. So by the time you get to your 6th row of puff stitches, I will show you how to do the last 2 rows. Okay, I'll meet you back here at the pattern. Okay, so I just did what's going to be my final row of puff stitches, and then I'm going to chain 2, and I'm going to do the normal pattern for the next row, which is just half double crochets all the way across. So I will complete that row and then meet you back here and show you how the last row is different than what you've been doing in the normal pattern. I'll meet you back in a minute. Okay, I just did another row of half double crochets on top of the puff stitches. And I just wanted to point out to you, again, this is why I use stitch markers, because you might get confused. See how that angles off a little bit like I told you it would? It's because we're doing a puff stitch and we're going back and forth, so we're kind of pulling the yarn a little bit, even though we have the exact number of stitches and it's exactly the same. It's the stitch pattern that's creating a little bit of an angle, which is not going to be a problem when we actually put our cowl together. So don't worry about that. Just like I say, use your stitch markers, make sure you're getting the exact same number of stitches. Okay, so we're going to pretend that I have my 6 rows of puff stitches. I've just finished my 6th row. I've done a half double crochet. You have anyway. I'm just on a sample with only 3 rows. Okay, so in the normal pattern, what we've done is turn and done a single crochet in that 3rd loop. But because this is our last row of stitches and we want it to look a similar length than this rather than a single crochet, so chain 2. Rather than a single crochet, you're going to yarn over and do a half double crochet into that 3rd loop, just like you did before. So catching the back stitch and the 3rd loop, pull up a loop and pull through all 3 stitches instead of a single crochet. Again, into the back loop. I got to turn it so you can see where I'm catching. And that 3rd loop. Pull up a stitch, pull through all 3. So the biggest thing is just remembering to make a half double crochet rather than a single crochet in this row, okay? And catching that 3rd stitch, pulling through all 3. And say, if it gets stubborn, I have to use my finger sometime to get down there to get into it, okay? So that's how you create our last row. And so you'll see that it will create that row of the chain stitch look across the top, but the stitch will be a little bit longer, coming closer to matching what we did on the foundation row. If we did single crochets, it would be super small. So that's why we're ending with the half double crochet into the 3rd loop. So do that all the way across, and then when you get to the end, tie it off and leave yourself a little bit of it doesn't have to be a long one, just a piece of yarn. I'll meet you back here as I get to that. Okay, I just finished that row of half double crochet in that 3rd loop to create our nice chain stitch across the front. I'm just going to snip my yarn and pull through and just pull tight to tie it off, okay? Now, I failed to mention in the beginning of the video, you probably could do a little stretch to straighten that out if you're worried about it, but it's really not an issue. I failed to mention in the beginning of the video that you will probably need, well, you will if you're you're gonna need 2 skeins of yarn, because these are 5-ounce skeins, and the cowl itself took 5-something ounces. Well, probably closer to 6 by the time you get that last row and the fringe on. So I was definitely into my 2nd skein. I had to add, like, I had 3 more rows to do when I added the 2nd skein. So you'll need 2 skeins. And then the other thing I forgot to mention was you're going to need some sort of clamps. These are some I just bought, I think at Joann. These clamps, they're kind of nice because you can just open them up and they'll hold your work together, okay? You're gonna need some type of clamp. If you have a bunch of these kind of clamps laying around, that'll work too, okay? You just need something to hold your work together as we're sewing the cowl together to go around. So I apologize for not mentioning that at the beginning, but if you can find yourself some type of clamps to put this together, something to hold it together. I mean, you can even use stitch markers if that's all you've got. That's helpful. It moves around a little bit more with those, but that is doable if you need that. And we'll be going on to sewing the cowl together, and I will show you how to do that. So make sure you have some sort of clamping system, and we will come back and complete putting the cowl together. Okay, let's see if we can put this together. Okay, so you want to lay your work so that the right side is leaning against your surface, okay? And then you're going to take the piece on the right and cross it over so that the right side is showing. And then the piece on the left and cross it over. And now you're going to match up this corner. This is where your clamps come in, okay? So match up that corner, and these ends that you are hanging out, you don't need to worry about sewing those in because they can actually become part of the fringe, okay? So clamp that corner together, and as you can see with that way that's slanted, it's going out sideways, but that's not going to be a problem. We're going to pull this up to match along the side of that, which will only give more of an opening for your head to go through. So it's really not an issue. Okay, then you want to lay that flat along the edge, lining them up so that they're even. You don't want to pull it, just make it lay nice and natural. And then I like to go up to the next corner and clamp these together. These sometimes are really hard to open. I know there's several different types of clamps. I'll see what I can find online and post some links for you below. I know I've seen some that might be a little easier to work than these. Okay, again, just placing clamps, excuse me, all the way along the edge so that those don't separate. That's why I say these clamps are really nice. That way you don't have to worry about things shifting. It feels like that. It's just because of, again, don't worry about the fact that that pucker's there because that's going to be around the neck and it's not going to be an issue. Okay, now turning it the other way and making sure you're lining up the piece on the bottom side. I'm going to come this way with it. Again, not really stretching the piece, just putting it nicely together. Finding hairs in there. And making your way back up to that corner. Pull that stitch marker out, I don't need it. Again, don't worry about cutting that tail off because you can, we're gonna put a point of fringe right there where those join. So you can just count it in as part of your fringe, okay? So once you have that clamped all the way around together, okay? Then flip it to the back side. And you are going to, and I will mark that first one with a marker. Well, now I know what I dropped. It's my crochet hook. Somewhere along this back edge, anywhere towards the center, that way your stitches aren't going to show as much. I'm going to attach my yarn just by pulling up a loop and chaining, gracious, if I can get a hold of it. Then I like to go back in that same stitch that I grabbed, and we'll kind of crochet around that to catch it. Pull up a loop and just do a single crochet, and you're going to be catching in your regular stitches all the way across, just doing a single crochet all the way around. And not that you need to be counting these, just make sure you're going in that bottom row of stitches where you're getting 2 loops underneath, okay? Not that you need to count stitches because you don't, but I did just do 4, and now I'm marking my stitch because when I come back around, I'm definitely going to want to know where to attach to tie that off, okay? Okay, so you're going to be doing that all the way around the outside edge of the cowl, okay? I will meet up with you when we get to this point where we've got the 2 together, because we're going to have to crochet both of those together. So I'm going to crochet for a minute and I'll meet you back over here. Okay, I'm now to the point where I'm going to be actually crocheting through both of these layers, okay? So I'm going to take out that first clip, go into my next stitch on top. This first area around is going to be easy because you've got the easy stitches to see. It's when you go around the corner, it's going to be a little bit harder. So I'm going under the stitch, and then I'm going to go right into that corner of that piece that we're attaching to from below, pull up a loop and do a single crochet. And again, I'm just going to do this all the way across in the stitch, finding a spot to go in here, pulling up a loop and single crocheting. There's no particular place to go on these because this is your raw edge, or the edge row. Let me flip it this way and show you. It's this edge where you have all your turning chains. So there's not really necessarily a place to go. You just want to crochet evenly across. So back to where we are. Hope that all got on camera. Apologize. My table's too wide. Single crochet, pull up a loop, going under the obvious loop on the front half here, and pulling up a loop. So this is why I say these clamps are really nice, because you can just ease it all together until you reach your next clamp, and then pull it out and move on. Make sure you're catching that bottom row or you're going to end up in trouble over here. So make sure you're catching it. Okay, I'm going to go all the way to almost the corner, and I'll meet you back at the corner. I'm almost to my corner. Again, going under all those single, well, they're not single crochet stitches, but where you've got the 2 loops, your V-stitch look. Getting to my corner. And when I get to this last one, we're going to do like you do anytime you're going around a corner or a blanket. We need to put, I'm going to take this out. You need to allow an edge to go around the corner. So we're actually going to put 2 more stitches in that same area. And that allows us to turn a corner without it pulling on everything. Very much anytime you're going around a corner or granny stitching or whatever, it's very similar to that. Okay, now on this side, as I mentioned before, now we've got all those turning chains we've got to be going into. You just want to spread it out evenly, but you have an actual stitch to go in on the back side. So aim for that while you're doing these and making sure you're catching all of those, okay? This still will turn out looking fine because you're doing a single crochet across the top of it. Just make sure you're catching those loops underneath and not missing any. That will kind of help you even things out. So wherever you need to catch it under the chain to get into the next stitch, pulling up a loop, and again just kind of catching the chain stitches, turning chains into the next stitch, and single crocheting across, okay? Let's say this little area is a little bit tricky just because the clean stitch to go in is on the back side on this one. So you're just gonna do that. All the way till you get to where these join again. And then you're just gonna single crochet all the way around till you meet the stitch where we joined in the back, okay? That joins the two pieces together to create the cowl. So just keep going around again like I did, just being careful to make sure you're catching all of these stitches on the back. Just kind of pulling in the turning chains around here. And when you get to the back, we'll join at the back and I'll meet you there. So on my last few stitches on my back edge before I reach my join, I've gone all the way around the front. And here's my last stitch. Now to join, I'm gonna make this look a little bit nicer by coming from the back edge under that first stitch and grabbing our yarn. It's a little tricky. Pulling it tight on the hook and pulling it through. And pulling tight. That looks a little bit better than a lot of your normal joints, okay? Now you're gonna take that, and this one actually you are gonna have to weave in because this is, unless you're putting fringe all the way around, which you absolutely can do. I just chose not to do that on my original one. We might put more fringe on this one than I did here, but I don't know that I'd put it all the way around because part of me was thinking that would be tucked in the coat, might not be seen anyway, but you're welcome to put fringe all the way around if you'd like to do that. So I'm gonna tie that in. Just wanted to let you know that an alternate way you could do this, we're gonna be adding fringe next, or you could leave it like this if you don't like the fringe on it. You can add buttons now as we've stitched together, just add them as decorative piece if you don't like the fringe and do something like that. Or if you want to make this a scarf instead of a cowl, you would need to make your base foundation half double crochet row much longer than we did because the scarf's going to be longer than 33 inches. Measure your favorite scarf, see how long it is, make your foundation row that length and keep going back and forth. I would maybe only go 5 puff row stitches wide, maybe cut, you know, not do that one so it's not quite so wide for a scarf. But just keep in mind, this particular pattern does definitely have a wrong side. And though it still looks nice, it definitely does not show off that flat chain stitch look that we did. So I think it's kind of nice to be able to force this to have the right side out to look at together. So, okay, I'm gonna get prepped and ready to show you how to do our fringe, and I'll be back. I just wanted to pop in and say, and I probably should have said this at the beginning, that if you're absolutely in love with this yarn, I have seen some of the Hello Gorgeous yarn available on eBay. It's not the cheapest per skein, but you can buy it if you're absolutely in love with this colorway. This particular colorway is called Cactus Flower. I think when I was on there the other day, I saw somebody that had like 5 skeins of it or something. So if you're doing the cowl and the hat, you might want to get 3 just to be safe because it's not one that's readily available. But you certainly can find Hello Gorgeous on some eBay sites. They had several. Peacock was another really pretty one they had. That's some very, very nice colorways. But I really believe this Hobby Lobby, I love this yarn, is a wonderful substitute for that. So it's up to you what you want. Like I say, they have much brighter colors in this, in their print series. Just see what you can find. I'll be back in a minute to show you how to do the fringe. Okay, let's get the fringe made to put on here. You will need, if you want to do the same number of fringe areas that I did, which basically is just from where these attached to each corner with 3 in between, you will need 36 strands to do your fringe, because I do 4 strands per section. So if you want to do it more often, put an extra strand there, you'll need some extra strands. But either way, at least 36 strands to do it the way that I did it, okay? When I make my fringe, I like to have something to wrap around. This is a book that's just a little over 6 inches long, okay? So I'm going to use that to wrap my yarn around, and I'm going to count because I only need 36 this time. So I usually take the strand from the bottom and just wrap around. So that will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry, I got to pull my yarn out. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I'm not pulling very tight. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 30, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I told you I like to count to 20 and then start over again, okay? So that's 36. I'm going to do a couple more just for good measure, okay? Just to make sure I have enough. So then at the end where I started at the bottom, where I'm holding that beginning thread, I like to use a book because this gives you somewhere to put your scissors. Then I go underneath, and I just only cut it on one side for this particular length of thing. If you needed shorter lengths, you could turn and cut on that side. But for this I wanted about 12 to 13 inch pieces. So that's why I decided to then need to cut off where the yarn quit through. Get that out of the way. Okay. So now I have all my yarn strands that I can be doing my fringe with, okay? So I like to start at the points where I'm beginning and ending. So we're gonna put one here first, and then we'll go to where we joined the 2 pieces together here, and then we'll figure out what to do in between. I will probably most likely just do what I did on the other one. So grab 4 pieces of your yarn and fold them in half best you can, finding that center. I like to pinch it with my fingers so I hold that in place. And I want the loop to be on the top of my work, so I'm going to come up from the bottom. And this first one is fairly easy to find because we just did that 3 crochet in the corner. Just come up from under your work, grab your loop, and pull tight as you're with the hand there. Oops, see, they snuck off already. You want to pull tight as you can so that they don't sneak off while you're trying to pull through. Pull through all 4 so your loops are, and your thing is underneath your work. This will put the loop on top of the work. Now, this is where I need to include this strand that we left that we didn't weave in. If you want to weave them in, okay? Now, pulling from the center, I just grab my fingers, pull all of those strands through. Looks like we're missing a couple. It's normally easier than this. Okay, making sure that you've got all those strands through. I try and kind of keep an idea of where the center of that was that we pulled through. And now I'm going to pull tight. And by pulling the way we did, we now have the loop on top. You can do it the other way, but it makes it so that it looks like this, so the loop's underneath. I like it this way. Okay, so let's move on from this one, and we're gonna do the next one in this corner right here. And I found the center of my strand. I grabbed 4 more, found the center, pinch it so I kind of don't lose that. And working from underneath the work, I keep messing this up, working from underneath, putting my crochet hook, it's pretty much under that single crochet row we did around. If you want to go further down into the work, you can. Let's make sure those didn't cross over and I lose them. Okay, grabbing all 4 strands, pulling down into your work, pulling tautly on in your left hand. I'm right-handed, so that would be in my left hand. Pulling through, making sure all 4 came through. I'm actually gonna, we're good here, okay. So we've got pulled through, and then I use my fingers to open up a little bit and grab all those strands. And I'm including the tail that I had from ending my work on that. Pulling through, and that leaves the knot on the top hand side, okay? So this is what I keep messing up. So I want to come from the bottom of my work. If I want the knot on the top, I come from the bottom. So just the opposite of what you are. Okay, now you can see all these yarn lengths are not the same, but that's okay. That's why I like to cut them a little bit long so that I can even things out. So once we get all these attached, we'll go through and cut them off to be the same. Okay, so the next spot that I go to is turning my work, going to this corner. I need to move all these because I keep getting them caught. Grab 4 more. Got a lot of purple in here, so try and make sure that they're fairly even when I put them together because they kind of got messed up over there. So make sure that one side is fairly even to start. Pull of that, and then pulling in half, pinching, coming from the bottom side of my work where these 2 cross over and join. Pulling underneath, grabbing those 4 loops. We don't have an extra loop this time to grab, so pull through, making sure you got all 4 on there. And then pull through. Okay, now this is where you get to decide how much fringe you want, okay? On this piece, I did, so here's the end point and the point of the thing. So I did 3 in between, and I just kind of eyeballed it. So basically doing it this way, you'd find the center of these 2 and then the center of those 2. So I'm gonna do that, but I'm gonna mark it with stitch markers so that I try and make it even all the way around. So if you want to, you can kind of match those 2 knots and then put a stitch marker here. That pretty much puts you in the middle of those 2, okay? You open that and you're kind of in the center there. Do the same thing on this side. Match those 2 knots. Putting a stitch marker here. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to be able to put them in between those spots. So you can do the same thing if you want. Match the knot with where you have the stitch marker. And if you want to go through and count stitches so you're exact, if you're a perfectionist like that, you can go right ahead and do that. Or we'll mark these and we can count and see how close we are. Okay, then turning and this knot to the stitch marker again. Matching and throwing a stitch marker right there. Okay, so see how that looks fairly evenly spread out where we've got 3 in between. That's just by overlapping and finding the center of each spot. So we'll do that one more time on this side. Taking this knot and matching it with the stitch marker. Throwing in a stitch marker on that fold. And again from this side, taking this knot and matching it to the center stitch marker. You say, if you want more fringe, you can calculate, you could count your stitches and see how many you have and do math and divide it so that you've got more in there. So that pretty much looks even to me. So just for fun, let's count stitches and see what we've got in between. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then a stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and a stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So yeah, so that's pretty dang close. It's like there's one extra stitch along there, so that happened to be the center, and then we did it. So I think it's close enough that I'm not gonna worry about shifting anything. So I'm gonna go through and finish doing the loops as I showed you, coming up from the bottom so that the crossover loop shows on the top, okay? This one is, so if you want that loop to cross over on the top, and if you want to catch more than the single crochet edge we did, go down further into your work if you feel that's a little bit more secure. This one is nice and secure because it's around 3 of them. So that's up to you if you want to go a little bit deeper into your work. So I'm going to go through and I'll finish all of my fringe marks and show you what it looks like. Okay, I've completed putting my fringe in all the way around. So the last step is just cutting your fringe so they are about the same length, okay? Unless you don't care. I mean, they're fairly close, but again, these are gonna angle down and hang at a different thing, but I still try and make them around the same length. In all honesty, it probably wouldn't matter too much other than maybe this super long tail coming out from the end we didn't weave in. So I grabbed a ruler. You don't have to be this precise if you don't want, but I grabbed a ruler. So I think I'm gonna cut them off. Well, actually, I like them kind of long, so I think I might go ahead and do the 5-inch mark. So again, I'm just eyeballing it, not worrying too much about exactness on this. These may not be the best scissors to be doing this with. And then if you can use your ruler every time if you want, if you're a perfectionist and want to be super exact on it, you can do that, but sometimes I just find it easier to just, I mean, you know, fringe is kind of loose and carefree like hippies are, right? So if these were closer together, it'd be easier to eyeball and kind of cut them along the edge, but since they're spread apart a little bit more, it's a little bit harder, so. And there we have it. There we have it. Now we have a Hello Gorgeous fringed cowl in this. I love this yarn print series in Sunset. Gorgeous yarn, gorgeous yarn. Love, love, love it. And I'm excited because I believe I have enough left here for the Macy Hat. So I'm going to grab this yarn and I'm going to pull out my Macy Hat pattern by Mrs. B's Crochet, and I'm going to whip out a hat to go with this cowl for my granddaughter, and I'll take a photo of that and add it to the end of the video. I hope you've enjoyed making this Hello Gorgeous fringed cowl with me today, and I'd appreciate it if you'd give my video a thumbs up so more people can see it, and please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so. That helps the algorithms and getting more people exposed to this fun project. Thanks for joining me today. Have a great day.